Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. My name is Corey Stackhouse and we are going to be going through a 401 rollover guide. So if you're tuning into today's video, you're probably at the crossroads of determining what to do with your previous employer-sponsored plan. So in today's video, we're going to go over the four main options you have, whether that's going to be leaving it with the previous employer, rolling it into your new employer's plan, rolling it into an IRA, or cashing it in. We're going to go over the advantages and disadvantages of all four options. So grab your pen and paper and let's dive in. So the question that gets asked often is which option is the best for the individual that's asking? So option one, we're going to look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of leaving it with the former employer. So an advantage that you would receive from leaving it with the previous employer is you're going to have a world of simplicity. There's not a whole lot that you're going to have to do with that account. You're not required to do anything with it if your account balances are over a certain dollar threshold. Most of the time it's going to be $5,000. In the event that it's under $5,000, you probably are going to be required to do one of the other three options that we'll get to here in just a moment. But another advantage of leaving it in the 401k, there are some ERISA protections inside of there. So in the event you file bankruptcy or have creditors coming after you, there are some extra protections that can be found inside of 401k plans versus IRAs. There also might be some stable value funds that you can invest in to then take a loan out of that 401k, whereas other account types may not allow for that, which I'll get into here in just a moment. Some disadvantages that you may have from leaving it with the previous employer. There's a potential for neglect. So if it's out of sight, out of mind, a lot of the time you aren't going to be readily paying attention to those investments and how they are allocated and making sure that they are in line with your financial goals. Another thing on those investments, there tend to be a limited number of options. In general, whenever you are inside of a 401k, you'll find anywhere from 15 to 30 different investment options depending on what the employer has offered. So that's going to be limited relative to an IRA, for example, where you have thousands of different things you can invest into. There are some early withdrawal restrictions inside of the 401k that are generally less favorable than the IRA as well. So food for thought to keep in mind. The next option one would have would be to transfer it to a new employer-sponsored plan. So in this case, we'll consider a 401k plan. Advantage of doing this, consolidation does make life a little bit easier. You aren't going to have multiple accounts and multiple places that you have to manage and make sure that are invested appropriately. You will have continued growth inside of that account. You will also be able to contribute to the new 401k plan and also add to those monies that you have saved inside of that old account, again, for consolidation's sake. There are loan provisions that could be offered inside of the new plan as well. So again, another perk of a 401k versus an IRA, if that's something that's going to be applicable to you. Some disadvantages of moving it to the new 401k is there might be new plan limitations. There might be different administrative fees inside the plan, or the investment options may be different from what you're used to on the old plan. Now, there are going to be vesting schedules most of the time with retirement plans offered by employers as well. So in short, whenever you decide to add monies to these types of accounts, there is a period of time where the matching contributions from the employer are going to be held against you per se if you don't stick with the employer long enough. So not that it puts handcuffs on you per se, but the employer contributions that are added to that account may be restrictive depending on when you leave the new employer that you transition to. Paperwork and effort. There are a couple of extra steps involved in moving money from one plan to the other, whether you're moving it into a new employer retirement plan or you're moving it into an IRA. Most of the time, the previous employer does have their own set of paperwork, which will be required to be completed in order to move those funds to a new location. The third option that you have with your previous employer-sponsored plan is you could roll it into an IRA. So an advantage of rolling it into an IRA is you're going to have many more investment types available to you than what you would relative to the old 401k or even the new employer's plan in most instances, because they're going to be limited to anywhere from 15 to 30 on average investments inside of them. Whereas an IRA, you're going to be able to invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, in some cases real estate and other products out there. There is some tax strategy flexibility. So there are Roth conversions available out of IRAs, which tends to be useful for individuals who are thinking about the future tax that they're going to be paying on themselves. Now, you can complete this inside of a 401k as well. I don't want to act like this is only an advantage for an IRA, but the simplicity around converting an account from one type to the other is much easier than what it is inside of an employer-sponsored plan. For estate planning purposes as well, there are going to be more options for beneficiaries, and you can potentially avoid probate if you set yourself up appropriately. A disadvantage of moving to an IRA would be you're going to have to worry more about creditor risk. There are some limitations that apply to IRAs. It's like 1.3 million, and that is going to be the mark that is protected on IRA. So this isn't going to be applicable to most individuals, but if you do have a vast dollar amount inside of your employer-sponsored plan or your IRA, you might want to consider the options of looking at leaving it there versus rolling it into an IRA because of that lack of protection that you would receive. Now, IRAs do not allow for loans inside of them, whereas 401k plans or employer-sponsored plans do sometimes, depending on your employer. And another disadvantage of an IRA would be it can be a little bit more complex because you do have more investment options available to you, depending on who you're working with and the fourth option that you have with your previous employer-sponsored plan is you could cash it out. So some advantages of doing this is you would have immediate cash for any instant expenses that you need to take care of or credit card debt or whatever it may be. And you're also not going to have any ongoing management any further on type of that account. So it's going to be very simple. Disadvantages of pulling that money out of the 401k would be tax implications. So if you pull that money out and put it in the bank account, that's going to be treated as ordinary income for the tax year that you do it within. In the event that you are under the age of 59 and a half, you could have a 10% penalty depending on the circumstances. You also are not going to have any more retirement savings that are applicable to you in that account itself. Now, you could set up outside IRAs or contribute to the new employer-sponsored plan, but obviously those monies that you're cashing out are no longer going to be working for you. And if you wanted to do some compound interest calculations with a calculator, that can be very significant for your future self. I hope you derive value from this short video this week. Remembering that managing your investments and your retirement savings is going to be a crucial step in making sure that your financial future is set up the way that you want it, whether you choose simplicity of leaving the funds where they're at or rolling it to the new employer-sponsored plan, rolling it to an IRA, or cashing in that account. Please make sure that you are working with a financial professional or a tax advisor to make sure you're making the best decisions for yourself. If you did derive value from this video, please consider leaving it a thumbs up and sharing with some friends or family who maybe could benefit from the information. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.